YouTube or on our star.com or streaming. If you don't mind, perhaps you can move over so that you're not actually just trying to shut us down. Thank you. Okay, so let's drill down on Canadian capabilities, or the lack of them. Every defense minister, since I was a young political reporter, has been asked about defense spending. The peace dividend that people hope for appears to now be receding into the past. Canada ranks, I believe, 24th. I'm sure you're on top of the numbers, so if I'm wrong, correct me. 24th out of the 29 members in NATO in defense, in terms of our percentage. We're at 1.4% of GDP for defense, and the target should be 2%. So my question is, how do you persuade voters and your fellow politicians in Parliament and Cabinet that Canada needs to spend more given the current state of affairs?
I actually look at a few other things in addition to the items that you mentioned, Martin. One of them being that Canada is the 6th largest defense spender amongst the NATO countries. So the statistic that you mentioned takes a percentage of GDP. Yep. Many of the countries ahead of Canada have a smaller GDP. Therefore, they are able to reach the 2% target more quickly than Canada.
Correct.
Exactly. And so I would also like to look at the total number of dollars spent on defense, and Canada is the 6th largest defense budget.
Do you believe it's important to spend more? And if so, how do you persuade people that they have to?
I just want to add one more important point before I get to that question, and that is in terms of boots on the ground. Canada has a very large presence in NATO by leading the Enhanced Forward Presence Battle Group in Latvia, which we have done for 5 years and will continue. We are elevating that with our allies to brigade level. We have 3,000 troops or so at the ready in case they are called up by NATO. And we are seen as a leader at NATO by Jens Stoltenberg and others. So it's important to look at the tangible contribution that Canada makes as well as our overall defense spending. I will say that in terms of voters and your question relating how you convince voters, it's important to recognize that we are on an upward trajectory in terms of our defense spending. Our government committed $8 billion for military spending in the last federal budget, for example. We have a defense policy update that is coming up in the fall, and we will continue to ensure that we are doing what it takes to protect this country and participate in our allied membership called NATO. And the last point is that in June...
Can you actually move down, because in terms of personal space, you're getting a little close to the minister, and that's just pushing.
I'm going to take a break, Martin.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
All right, thank you. Stand by, folks, and we'll take a little break for about a minute or two, and try to solve this. Thanks.
Ukraine needs peace. Stop sending weapons. This is a NATO proxy war. You're lying. You are risking a nuclear war. We need peace in Ukraine. We need peace with Russia. It's not about democracy. Ukraine. Shut down political parties. Exile journalists. This is a sham. We need to stop the war. The university should be standing for peace. What we support no more military spending. We need investment in the climate emergency. This war is impoverishing the planet. This war is exacerbating the climate crisis.
Leave her alone. Leave her alone. Leave her alone.
Come on.
This is a point of view that you don't get in the media.
Get out of here.
I think we've heard her point of view, and I think
This is a point of view that you never hear in the Canadian mass media.
who has been respectful enough to come from Ottawa to speak with us. We have heard your point of view, and I would appreciate
The Trudeau government dominates the media message.
represents the federal government. Yeah, and you're interrupting me.
I'm not interrupting anyone except her.
You have already heard me, so you did your mistake.
We understand your message and we understand your perspective. I'm here.
This is a message that's not heard in the major media at all. At all.
If you want more angry sound, stop attacking.
Well, stop NATO aggressively increasing its membership to the Russian borders with nuclear weapons. Do you remember the Cuban Missile Crisis? You remember the Cuban Missile Crisis? When Cuba allowed Russian missiles on the territory of Cuba? How did Kennedy respond to that? He imposed a shipping blockade, but the Soviet Union removed the missiles from Russia on the grounds that Russia would remove, that the U.S. missiles in Turkey and Italy would be removed as well.
We need peace. We need to end the war. We need ceasefire and negotiations. We need peace.
Civil discussion. That's what is necessary under these circumstances, and that is what...
A civil discussion involves two sides or more.
To allow that to happen, you've had your opportunity to mention your point, state your position, and you've all been witness to that.
Why wouldn't you have a two-sided discussion?
We understand that. Now allow us to have our part of democracy to be exercised.
This is not democracy. This is a monologue by the government and the mass media and the corporations that benefit from arms expenditure and arms shipments. That's what's really going on here.
What is the solution to this then?
End the war.